Master horse racing with daily racing forms formulator. Now free for DRF Bets members. Sign up to get the best bonus in racing with a $250 deposit match, plus a $10 free bet and free formulator past performances. Go to drf.com/bet to play like a pro today.
Hi, everyone. Glad you've joined the Daily Racing Form Belmont Stakes webinar. I am Brad Free, and it's my pleasure to reintroduce renowned horse player, author, speed figure pioneer, and weekend etymologist, Andy Beyer. Andy, thanks for joining us today.
My pleasure, Brad.
The etymology reference was intended as a joke, and we will bring it up when we talk about the Belmont Stakes program favorite. Before we start analyzing most of the field, and we will have a Q&A segment toward the end, as well as Andy and I both summarizing our selections, let's first address the quality of this year's Belmont. It's nice that the 2022 champion juvenile male is going to run after being scratched from the Derby, but there are some names that are missing from the field, including the 1-2 finishers from the Kentucky Derby, Mage and Two Phils. Preakness runner-up Blazing Sevens not in the field. The 1-2-3 finishers from the Santa Anita Derby, Practical Move, Go Rocket Ride, and Skinner not in the Belmont, nor is UAE Derby winner Dermis Sotogake. Andy, not to knock the Belmont field, but maybe there have been stronger Belmonts in the past. What's your take on the overall quality?
You know, in preparing for this seminar, I've been looking back over Belmont history, and let's face it, the race, and in fact, the Triple Crown, has been on a decline in recent years, and I don't think it has anything to do with these specific horses. But there are two issues involved. Nobody wants to run back after a 2-week layoff after the Kentucky Derby. 17 Derby horses skipped this year's Preakness, and last year the Derby winner skipped the Preakness. And in addition, nobody wants to run a mile and a half. American horses aren't bred for it, and if you question that statement, just take a look at the field for the Brooklyn Handicap, which is on Saturday's card, now I guess it's the Brooklyn Invitational. Once one of the most prestigious races in the country, it's now sunk to grade 2. It's got a mediocre field because there aren't mile-and-a-half horses around, and even breeders are a little scared of tarring their horses with a reputation of being a mile-and-a-half horse, because that means he doesn't have a lot of speed. So there were just some trends in the in the sport as a whole that are working against the Belmont and the Preakness.
Well, everybody wants to breed for speed and an early return on investment, so to speak. Even though the Belmont Stakes at a mile and a half does seem like a little bit of an oddity, from a historical perspective, this race does have some relevance, and it's significant even when the Triple Crown is not on the line. It gives the winner, whoever happens to win the Belmont, one more achievement to add to his resume. And in fact, over the last, since the Breeders' Cup era began in 1984, from 1985 on, there have actually been 10 winners of the Belmont who have gone on to be named champion 3-year-old, and there they are, including Essential Quality a couple of years ago. There are a couple of Triple Crown winners in there as well. Then you go back to Justify and American Pharaoh, and then all the way back to Risen Star, who, by all rights, he probably should have been a Triple Crown winner. I guess my point that I want to make is that as unusual as this mile-and-a-half race is, it does have some significance with regards to year-end voting for the Eclipse. So we'll talk more about the Eclipse Awards at the end of the season. I don't believe that the 3-year-old champion male is going to be determined on Saturday. Races like the Haskell, the Travers, and even the Breeders' Cup Classic are still ahead. But it is an important race for some of these 3-year-olds, perhaps one more so than others. And even as of right now, I don't think we really know who the best 3-year-old in the country is. Maybe it's the Derby winner, Mage. I thought Two Phils ran better than Mage did when he finished second in the Derby. But at any rate, it's an important race for these 3-year-old colts. For the sake of accountability, before we start getting into analyzing the field for this year's Belmont, just to let you know how Andy and I have done so far, I guess you could say that we're due. Andy liked Dermasotogaki in the Kentucky Derby. He got wiped out at the break and had no chance. I liked Skinner in the Kentucky Derby. He was scratched. I defaulted into Angel of Empire. He was third best. Andy and I both picked Mage in the Preakness because we had to pick somebody. So I guess we are due for a win. So let's go ahead and take a look at the field of 9 3-year-olds running a 1.5 miles in race number 12 on Saturday at Belmont Park. And the favorite is number 6. And we're going to start by going off into some etymology discussion. And Andy, I'll let you talk about why you believe the 6 horse's name is Fort and not Forte.
Well, his name is Fort, period. The word derives from French. It's not Italian. With the Fort in times long ago referred to the strongest point of a sword, and so the word came to be used to as sort of a synonym for somebody's strong point, like Bradfree's Fort is handicapping Santa Anita. It's mispronounced a lot because people see that E, but there are a lot of silent E's in French. And if you go into a French restaurant and order dessert, you don't ask for a chocolate torte, you ask for a chocolate tort. So I cringe every time I hear Forte, and I'd love to see this horse just disappear from the scene just to eliminate all that aggravation for me.
Well, Fort is actually reappearing on the scene, and he happens to be the 5-2 program favorite for the Belmont Stakes. Let's take a look at his past performances. And, this is a very interesting horse because there aren't many horses that go into the Belmont Stakes off a 10-week layoff. Fort was scratched from the Kentucky Derby the morning of the race because he had a foot bruise and he had a special shoe that was put on, and the vet did not like what he saw when Ford jogged the morning of the race. So he had to skip the Kentucky Derby, was put on the vet's list, was unable to even consider running in the Preakness. So this horse, who has won 5 consecutive graded stakes, 4 grade 1s, will be entering the Belmont off a 10-week layoff. And Andy, I guess the question is, has Fort improved at all since last year? His 2 starts this year in Florida would suggest the answer is no. What do you think?
Yeah, I was unenthralled by his wins in Florida. I mean, the figures, were not great. I mean, visually, I didn't think the races were overpowering. Of course, I kind of knocked him off his most recent one because I said, well, he beat Mage. What is that? So, he did beat the Derby winner, but, I certainly didn't see improvement in those races at 3. And, now coming into the Belmont off a layoff this long, I mean, has anybody ever done that?
Well, 11 horses have actually tried to do it, and we're going to talk about the one that had the most success in just a minute. Only one of those 11, and this is in the last 30 years, have even attempted to run in the Belmont Stakes off having not raced since before the 1st of May. This is not a, conventional way to go into the Belmont. I suppose if, Fort pops up and wins the Belmont, maybe there's a new pattern. Skip the Derby, skip the Preakness, and aim for the Belmont Stakes. I don't know. It's a feat that has not been done in recent times, and I'm sure that if Todd Pletcher and Mike Rapoli had their way, it wouldn't have been done this year. They would have much preferred to run Fort in the Kentucky Derby.
I mean, this is a very unPletcher-like move, and I just wonder if the owner, Mike Rapoli, was, just so frustrated by, not getting into the first two legs of the Triple Crown that he had, insisted on taking a shot. Because Pletcher is probably the most meticulous planner in the profession, and he's really winging it here. I don't think he would have ever, done something like this unless his hand were forced.
Well, it's a very interesting dilemma, and his figures would suggest that Fort has some improvement to do. Of course, we haven't seen him in 10 weeks, and we know that 3-year-olds, 2-year-olds, and 3-year-olds can improve at this time of year, but so far we haven't seen it. He's running the same races virtually that he ran last fall. So look, I respect any horse who's won 5 in a row, 5 graded stakes races. I'm just not sure that I want to take him at odds of 5-2. And having said that, I must confess he is in my top 4. So Andy, would you agree with 5-2 being a little bit short to take?
Yeah, I think the smart money is going to be pretty skeptical of this horse. Let's not forget also, this is 1.5 miles. This is a kind of a huge leap for him. He's been 1.125 miles once, and now, stretching out to this longer distance. That's a challenge for every horse, under even the best of circumstances. So, I just think there are too many negatives, certainly too many to take 5-2 or 3-1.
Too many uncertainties to take a short price. I agree. It's interesting. Looking back through the history books, Ford will be only the 3rd Breeders' Cup juvenile winner to contest the Belmont Stakes. I thought that was a little bit unusual. Essential Quality, of course, was the Breeders' Cup winner a few years ago. He won the Belmont Stakes. I referred to earlier about the most recent horse entering the Belmont Stakes off a long layoff and how well he did. And let's go ahead and take a look at the past performances of 2018 runner-up Gronkowski. Now, it's a little bit weird because he was coming in from overseas, but you can see his most recent start before the Belmont was in late March, and he ran a pretty good race. He was unable to catch the Triple Crown winner Justify, but it would not be unprecedented for Fort to come up and, run well on Saturday. It's been done before.
In the case of Gronkowski, this wasn't their plan, however. He had qualified for the Derby by winning some race in Europe and got sick and couldn't make the Derby. So he was here, and so they took their shot in the Belmont. But the horse certainly did pretty well under the circumstances.
Yeah, he made the exacta worthwhile in the Belmont Stakes in 2018. Well, that's kind of our take on Fort. Look, we respect his accomplishments to this point, just not the type of horse that either of us want to bet on at a short number. We're going to go in kind of order of odds. And the second choice on the morning line is Tappet Trice, number 2, Tappet Trice. I was a little surprised that he was as well backed in the Kentucky Derby as the 9-2 second favorite. Andy, were you surprised at his price, and what about his performance in the Kentucky Derby?
No, I thought his race going into the Derby was as good as anybody else's. The Bluegrass had kind of a moderate pace, and he really had to kind of adjust his normal style, and you kind of hit the gas early, and it was what you might dismiss as a premature move if he'd lost. But I thought he ran a very good race to beat Verifying. The figure was of 99 was about as good as anybody else's. I liked the race, and I had him, I think, in my top 3 at the Derby, but I couldn't make an excuse for him at Churchill Downs. He was just way back, I mean, he didn't have any speed and he didn't have any close. I mean, he showed nothing at any stage of the race that I could see. So, I mean, to forgive that and and make him a short price, that I don't see.
Yeah, I don't see it either. When we talked about the Derby 5 weeks ago, I expressed some reservations with regards to the Bluegrass. That year in and year out, that race, regardless of the 99 fig that he earned, and it was a legitimate number, I see so many Bluegrass runners that just fail to reproduce that form in subsequent races. And when you look through this Colt's 6-start career, that's really the only fast race that he has run, the 99. So I just don't buy it. And I'm totally against Tapit Trice, kind of like Ford, at a short price. I
disagree on one note. I mean, he beat a pretty good horse in Verifying, and Blazing Sevens, who was third, almost won the Preakness. So to me, that pretty much confirms the legitimacy of the 99. Again, I'm not gonna. I can't forgive his Kentucky Derby, but I thought that race was okay.
Yeah, no, his Bluegrass was okay. I'd like to see him do it more than once. With regards to his 7th place finish in the Kentucky Derby, look, if he had an excuse or didn't fire for whatever reason, fine. I like Andy, I didn't see it. But I will say this, over the years, we have seen many horses who are unplaced in the Kentucky Derby, skip the Preakness and come back and surprise in the Belmont. And since the year 2000, there have been plenty of them. In fact, there's at least 10 horses that have, since the year 2000, that finished off the board in the Kentucky Derby and came right back in their next start 5 weeks later to win the Belmont, including the last 2 years, Mo Donegal and Essential Quality. They were both the favorite, $7.20 on Mo Donegal, $4.60 on Essential Quality. But we have seen some crazy upsets as well. Creator paid $34, Palace Malice paid $29, Summerbird, Birdstone, and Commendable. Crazy long shots that were unplaced in the Derby and came back and kind of revalidated their connections, hopes by scoring an upset in the Derby. So I guess what I'm saying is you could make a case or could forgive Tapit Trice for his 7th place finish. I'm not going to. History suggests maybe we should. He's the 3-1 second choice. That's a really low number to take, much like Fort. So we got the 2 favorites out of the way, and Andy and I are both kind of against both of those at short numbers. So let's go on to the 3rd choice on the morning line, and that is number 8, Angel of Empire. His 104 Beyer speed figure leaps off the page for the Belmont past performances. Andy, what do you think?
I've been wondering what to think about the Derby figure for the last 5 weeks. That whole Saturday card, the track variant was consistent from start to finish. And, the Derby came up, very fast. But, I looked at the way the horses, all the top horses ran. Everybody improved his number significantly among the top 4 or 5 finishers, leaving aside the 2 Phils, who had earned a big number on synthetics. So, I just don't know if I trust it. I mean, we at the Beyer speed figure team, we always look at our figures with a little bit of a skeptical eye. And, we've only had 1 horse come out of the Derby so far, and that was Mage, and he ran significantly lower than his 105 in the Derby. So, I don't know if I, will lay my life on the line behind that number. Nevertheless, I do like Angel of Empire.
Well, he's the fastest horse in the race on figs going into the race. On the other hand, when he did finish 3rd with the 104 in the Derby, he had the ideal setup. They were smoking early. The race unfolded perfectly for his style, and he took advantage of it to the extent that he was able to finish 3rd. I guess my question is if the Belmont Stakes unfolds at a pace scenario that's similar to the Preakness, i.e. no speed at all, I wonder how Angel of Empire will be able to adapt to that. He's adding blinkers in a race for the first time. He's been training in blinkers all spring long, so I don't really see that as an issue. But my question, Andy, is does he need a favorable, pace to run at in order to be effective like he was in the Risen Star and the Arkansas Derby?
Having done my share of Belmont history study, I'm going to answer that question with a resounding no. If you look at the records of horses who have won the Belmont in the last decade, 6 of the last 10 races, the last 10 Belmonts were won by a horse who ran in the Derby, skipped the Preakness, and was coming out after the 5-week layoff. That seems to be a good formula. But I mean, of those horses, at least 4 of them, 4 of the 6 were horses who were a mile back early in the Derby. Mo Donegal last year was 19th in the early going. Creator, who won the Belmont in 2016, he rallied from 18th to finish 13th. Tapwrit was 15th early. So the scenario of the plodding closer in the Derby coming into the Belmont after a 5-week layoff is a pretty good formula, and it has worked it has succeeded for horses that I'm sure we both threw out in a heartbeat, like Creator. So normally I would really be wary of Angel of Empire because of what you said about the pace scenario. In the Belmont, it doesn't seem to matter.
It does not seem to matter, at least for deep closers. We'll address the pace scenario when we talk about the next horse. But I think you make a valid point, Andy. These deep closers who, had the race flow in their favor in the Derby, you can't really downgrade them when they show up in the Belmont like Angel of Empire. Mm-hmm. And if you're wondering how good Angel of Empire is, let's take another look at his Arkansas Derby win 2 starts back. I liked this race a lot. It was an impressive win, and I thought he was a legitimate contender in the Kentucky Derby off this win in the Arkansas Derby. Can we roll the tape on the Arkansas Derby and watch Angel of Empire just blow the field away? This was back in early April at Oaklawn Park. So that's Angel of Empire just running away from the field. He finished a good 3rd in the Kentucky Derby. He inherited favoritism when Fort scratched from the Kentucky Derby. He ran well, Angel of Empire did, and I expect that he will run well again on Saturday. And if Andy's right that the pace does not matter, he might just deliver. And I do believe that his odds are going to be a little bit shorter than 7-2. I think that number, speed figures are the most influential factor when it comes to betting. Would you agree with that, Andy?
Certainly seems to be.
You very rarely get a high figure or a high price on a high figure horse. And I don't think that 7-2 will be offered on Angel of Empire. Okay. He'll be running late. And if he, perks up a little bit with the blinkers added in the afternoon, he could win this race. Okay. Let's talk about the 4th choice on the morning line, and that's number 4, National Treasure. I guess the question is, was his win in the Preakness Stakes legitimate, or was it just a phony race because he was able to walk on the lead? 48-4, 13-2. Andy, what do you think?
Well, you knew going in, he was going to get the dream trip, and he got it. In retrospect, I said, why didn't I bet this horse? When a horse has had that kind of a setup, just as a general handicapping rule, I don't like to come back and and bet anybody off a perfect trip. And so and plus the Belmont, yes, it's been won by speed horses. Remember, Secretariat won it showing speed, and the 2 Triple Crown winners in the last decade won on the front end. But but they were all like very good horses, legitimate favorites, champions. You don't, unlike races on dirt and in almost any other circumstance, you don't get many situations in the Belmont where a horse just gets on the lead and then the circumstances favor him and he keeps going. I mean, as we were saying earlier, this is a race that horses often win just by coming out of the clouds. So I don't think it's National Treasure's kind of race, but I guess I wouldn't be shocked if he won.
Well, I agree with you in principle that horses that win with a perfect trip, a perfect setup, are often bet against in their next start. I think that National Treasure is an exception because he had already established himself as one of the top members of his crop. He finished 3rd in the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. He was a runner-up in a Grade 1 last year, and his spring 2023 campaign was interrupted. He had to scratch from a race. There were some, mitigating circumstances. I don't think that the Preakness Stakes was necessarily a fluke. I agree that he had advantageous conditions, but when we roll the tape on the Preakness Stakes, you're going to see a horse that did something in the Preakness that he had never done before, and that is showed some resolve and some determination, fighting through the length of the lane with a very good horse by the name of Blazing Sevens, a Grade 1 winner from last year. And National Treasure, for the first time in his 6-start career, he actually showed some guts. He showed some determination. He showed some class, and he won the race. So I'm going to say this. I don't think that National Treasure's win in the Preakness was a one-off. I think he is a good horse, a lightly raced colt who is getting better. He is now back in the Baffert stable. He certainly improved when blinkers were put back on last time out. He had a big workout early this week at Belmont Park, and I expect National Treasure to run well on Saturday, to run well again on Saturday. And he is the 2nd highest rated horse, last start speed figure in the field. His 98 Beyer is only behind Angel of Empire's 104. National Treasure had a reputation as being kind of a chicken-hearted type of horse before the Preakness Stakes, but I think maybe the light switch went on for National Treasure. Andy might be a little bit against him. I'm a little bit for National Treasure. Let's go ahead and talk about a horse that I think is one of the more interesting horses in the race, and that's number 3, Arcangelo, a lightly raced son of Arrogate, whose connections put up $50,000 to run in this race. Andy, I think this is a good horse getting better, but is he good enough?
Could be. He's. I thought his last race was solid. That was a legitimate figure. If we distrust the Kentucky Derby figure, he's that 97 puts him there. With everybody else. I mean, visually, I mean, he was very game. He has got a really surprisingly impressive pedigree. His dam was has got such good bloodline. She was sold at auction for $2.8 million, and has got and her dam, produced 2 Belmont Stakes winners. So there is you can see that Tappet is in the pedigree. What worries me, and I don't mean to sound snarky about this, because I always love to see kind of low profile trainers, have a moment of glory in big races like this. But I mean, Jenna Antonucci's resume is pretty thin. And I was wondering, just, does that really matter? I looked up, the trainers, the last 10 Belmont winners, like they're all killers. I mean, the four dominant trainers in this country, Pletcher, Cox, Baffert, and Asmussen are among the winners, and the outliers are guys like Mark Cassey and Christophe Clement and Barclay Tagg, who are all great trainers. So even the nutsy horses who have won the Belmont, came from top barns. So that gave me a little pause about, backing Jenna Antonucci, but I wish her the best, and she'll be in my exactas.
Well, at 8-1, she'd better be in your exactas. Let's go ahead and take a look at the stretch run of the Peter Pan Stakes. And Archangelo, it was a one-turn, I call it a one-turn race at Belmont Park. It's a 1.8 miles. I guess maybe it's a turn and a half. But this was a gutsy win. He lost ground through the far turn, Archangelo did. And Bishop's Bay is a pretty good horse that Archangelo dueled with the length of the lane, and he refused to concede. Even when it looked like he was beaten in deep stretch, Archangelo kept on fighting, and I love to see that resolve by a horse in a tough stretch battle. And Archangelo won the race. He won it fair and square. The runner-up, Bishop's Bay, finished nearly 9 lengths clear of third. The number came back good. And this is a horse that he's never started around 2 turns, which I thought was a little bit interesting. But if he pops up and wins the Belmont Stakes, it will not be the first time a horse with a very similar pattern has done it. And back in 2014, we're going to take a look at his past performances right now. Let's take a look at Tonalist and how he looked going into the Belmont Stakes. Lightly raced, hadn't really done much, won the Peter Pan in dominating fashion. His 104 Beyer speed figure was huge, and he popped up and paid 20 and change winning the Belmont Stakes. So this is Archangelo is going to try to follow suit. It's interesting. Back in the 90s, there were actually 3 Belmont winners that came out of the Peter Pan Stakes: AP Indy, Colonial Fair, and Lemon Drop Kid. Since the year 2000, there have been 31 horses going from a start in the Peter Pan into the Belmont Stakes. Tonalist and Sir Winston are the only horses who have been successful. And both those horses, Tonalist and Sir Winston, entered the Belmont off triple-digit fig. So just because a horse ran in the Peter Pan doesn't give him a license to win the Belmont. But when they run fast in the Peter Pan, and I dare say that Archangelo's 97 qualifies as at least relatively fast, I think he's a very interesting horse at odds of 8-1. Let's turn our attention to a horse that I was kind of enamored with a little bit, and it's Hit Show, number 7, Hit Show. He made an early move in the Kentucky Derby into that fast pace and then just kind of flattened out. I think he's a candidate to outrun his 10-1 odds. Andy, you might have a different opinion, a different take on Hit Show. What is it?
Yeah, I mean, he didn't show me enough in the Derby, to make me consider him. I mean, his race in the Wood Memorial, he did have the tough number 12 post position in the field of 12, and so you can upgrade that race a little bit. But I just don't think that overall his I can't see a race on paper that I would say this makes him a potential winner here.
I will say this: if you look at his pattern of speed figures, he's never taken a step backward. Okay. Up and up and up and up. So I guess if he takes one more, move forward, he could pop up and win. And we talked earlier about horses that finished out of the money in the Derby, popped up and won the Belmont. I think the 10-1 is an attractive price, at least to fool around with in the exotics. Okay, those are
whenever I dismiss Brad Cox out of hand, it guarantees he's going to win in my face.
Big mistake to go against Brad Cox, just like same with Bob Baffert out here in California. Those are the 6 favorites on the morning line. We're going to just kind of gloss over 3 horses that I doubt that Andy probably agrees with me. I don't know this for sure, but Red Route 1 at 15-1. I don't think he's fast enough, nor is the horse that he defeated last time out, Tapit Shoes, right?
Correct. Couldn't see him.
The longest shot in the field is only interesting. I'm referring to number 5, Ir Miracolo. He's interesting because he is a potential thorn in the side of National Treasure. Ir Miracolo added blinkers 2 starts back. He didn't break well in his first start with blinkers, but last time out, wow, where did that speed come from? He went 45 and change. And if he does that in the Belmont Stakes, not only will he give National Treasure a battle early, he could clear the field. I don't like him at all, Andy, but Ir Miracolo could potentially influence how this race unfolds. Would you agree with that?
Could be, but as I say, I just don't think that pace is going to be the issue in the Belmont that it would be in some other race.
Well, if you like a closer in the Belmont Stakes, you're happy to see a horse like Ir Miracolo in the field. And so now it's time for us to at least take a look at our selections for the Belmont. Andy, I'm going to let you go first. You like that horse coming with that into the race with that 104 Fig. Talk about
I like him more just because of the overall look of his PPs, the big close in the Derby, now going Derby to Belmont. That seems to be the winning formula, and I'm really against everybody else. I'll give Arcangelo a little look in, but I don't want the Pletcher duo, and I don't, for reasons I've stated, I don't want National Treasure, with all due respect to you, Brad, and so I'm sort of left with Angel of Empire, because of my lack of enthusiasm for the others.
Angel of Empire is listed at a surprisingly high 7-2, and I'm not going to quarrel with David Aragona, who I think is one of the best line makers in the business. I think he may have laid Angel of Empire a little bit too high. I hope I'm wrong. I hope he does go off at 7-2. I can bet more than one horse in the race. But would you be at all surprised to see his odds come down a little bit, Andy?
No, I think that's way too high.
Yeah, I think so too. Andy likes Angel of Empire. His 2, 3, 4 selections are Arcangelo, Tapitrice, and Fort, just because he has to pick somebody 2, 3, 4. I have a different take than Andy with regards to National Treasure. I think this has always been a top class horse. 3rd in the Breeders' Cup last year. I think he is just now coming into form. And while I agree he had absolutely ideal circumstances in the Preakness, I don't believe that he is necessarily pace dependent. I liked how he fought off Blazing Sevens. I liked how he has trained since the Preakness. And I think that this is a fresh horse, a dangerous horse going into the Belmont Stakes. I like him to spring the upset. I certainly respect Angel of Empire. I won't be at all surprised if Angel of Empire actually goes off as the favorite. Fort, he's won 5 in a row. You can't really knock him. And I thought that Hit Show maybe had a chance to outrun his odds. Andy likes Angel of Empire. I like National Treasure. Those are our top picks in race 12 on Saturday at Belmont. And now it's time for a little bit of Q&A, questions and answers. Will you account for this week's poor air quality in your handicapping? Andy, will you?
How would you begin to do that?
How would you? I don't know. Look, it's unfortunate. The Thursday card at Belmont Park was canceled. Training was canceled. Even if you thought that there was, some significance and it could influence the race, I just don't see how you could possibly quantify it.
No.
So the answer is no. Andy, you talked briefly about the race dates for the Triple Crown at the top. Why don't you go ahead and take this question?
Okay. after what has happened in the last 2 years, I mean, everybody in the racing industry should recognize that there is a need to put more space between the races. And 3 weeks from the Derby to the Preakness would probably do the job, and then 3 and probably 4 weeks from the Preakness to the Belmont. We've seen 2 years in a row, like the Preakness has just been destroyed by the fact that nobody wants to run their horses back that quickly, and nothing is going to change. So that's the obvious remedy. Now, I would my master plan for the Triple Crown would go a little farther. I would shorten the Belmont to 1.25 miles. I mean, the 1.5 mile distance is now an anachronism in American racing. Look, I mean, what was the last time we saw, like a really great performance in the Belmont Stakes? But my answer is 2007. I mean, this race has just been won so often by fluky long shots with poor form. I mean, people, traditionalists would say, as I once did, we want modern day horses to be subjected to the same tests that, say, Secretariat was, but that's not going to happen, when nobody shows up for the Preakness. So I think we have to adapt the Triple Crown to the realities of modern racing.
Well, traditionalists are very difficult to influence. I'm one of them, but I completely get that argument. It's not an easy call. I thought that when Major League Baseball, added the pitch clock, I thought that was just a ridiculous rule change. Having sat through several games this season, I think that Major League Baseball did the right thing by some of the changes that they have made. Maybe it's time for racing to do similarly with the Triple Crown. So Andy would like to see more space between the Triple Crown. That answers that question. Do we have another? Do you think Hit Show is way too high on the morning line? Shouldn't he be in front turning for home? Well, if he's in front turning for home, I'd love to have a bet on him. I thought he's intriguing at odds of 10-1. I don't think he's going to get a whole lot of play. I think that's a legitimate price. He ran well in the Kentucky Derby. He's gotten better each successive start. I don't see a scenario in which he's necessarily on the lead into the lane. And I was a little disturbed to read a Daily Racing Form clocker analysis this morning that suggested maybe Hit Show was better before the Derby than he is before the Belmont. So I don't think he's too high on the morning line. I don't know if he's going to be in front turning for home. Next question. Andy, is there anything unique about betting the Belmont track?
Well, the Belmont track is unique. I mean, it's 1.5 miles in circumference, and and there's certainly no track in America that is designed to favor a horse coming from 1 mile behind and making a long stretch run. So, the word unique is appropriate in your question.
It certainly is. A long track, 1.5 miles around only 2 turns. I guess maybe the question should be, how do you address that? Look, I'm just going to handicap the Belmont the same way I always have with most any top class race. Speed, pace, class, and condition are the determining factors. They're the bedrock of handicapping principles. Whether you're, going 5/8 on a bull ring somewhere or 1.5 miles at Belmont Park. Next question. How much of a factor will breeding play into your picks today? Andy, what about breeding? You mentioned Tapit earlier.
Well, I mean, it's a rather amazing stat, but like 6 of the 9 horses in the field are descendants of Tapit. He's won He's won 4 Belmonts in recent years. I'm sure everybody, who's got a 3-year-old with some Tapit bloodlines is saying, we might take a shot in here. Either as the sire or the broodmare sire, it's 6 out of 9. So, you're probably going to be okay, in most cases with pedigrees, no matter who you go for in this race.
I guess the answer is, pedigree is a factor, especially when horses are trying to do something they never have done, like run a 1.5 miles in June as a 3-year-old. So pedigree is certainly an influential factor. Percentage-wise, I wouldn't put a percent on any factor, be it pace, speed, class, condition, or pedigree.
I will note that one horse who does not have great-looking long-distance pedigree is Angel of Empire. Classic Empire, to my surprise, if you look at his progeny, the majority of them do their best going short, and the dam didn't have anything special to recommend her. He looks like the kind of the least tappity horse in the field.
Well, Angel of Empire is also the fastest horse in the race based on the 104 figure last time out. And Angel of Empire is Andy Beyer's top selection. I like National Treasure. Whoever you like, we wish you well on Saturday in the Belmont Stakes. For Andy Beyer, I'm Brad Free. We'll see you next time.
Master horse racing with daily racing forms Formulator, now free for DRF Bets members. Sign up to get the best bonus in racing with a $250 deposit match, plus a $10 free bet and free Formulator past performances. Go to drf.com/bet to play like a pro today.